Monday, June 27th, 2022. This is the regular meeting of the City of Asbury Park Planning Board. And tonight, presiding Mr. Henry will be our chairperson for this evening. Mr. Henry, will you please call us to order?
All right, it is 7 o'clock. This is the meeting of the regular meeting of the Asbury Park Planning Board. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, excuse me, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press by publication of the annual meeting notice and posted on the municipal bulletin board and the municipal website. All notices are on file with the board secretary. Official action may be taken on the following matters before this board this evening, which are the Partners Property LLC, 929 Asbury Avenue and 1000 First Avenue, and JLD Investment Group LLC, 701 to 705 Second Avenue, and the minutes of the June 6th regular meeting of the Planning Board. Fire exits are located on the east and west sides of the council chamber as well as to the back of the building. And everyone with a cell phone and or other electronic device, would you please shut them off for the duration of the meeting? And this meeting is being recorded by APTV. And if you would now please stand and join me in the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now take roll. Mayor John Moore.
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton.
Here.
James Bonanno.
Here.
Jim Henry.
Here.
Jennifer Souter.
Here.
Alexis Taylor.
Here.
Eric Gallipo.
Here.
Daniel Chanameo. Ms. Barnes is absent. Rick Lambert is absent. And Barbara Kurzak is absent this evening. And that is all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the June 6th, 2022 regular meeting of the Asbury Park Planning Board. Will I have a motion to approve those minutes?
And before we take a motion, I just wanted to put on the record that Ms. Souter had a minor change to specify that she was recused from the second application, and I've gone ahead and made those changes already, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Jennifer Souter and a second by Daniel Chanameo. Everyone is eligible to vote except for Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton, James Bonanno. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Minutes approved.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is the application of Partners Property LLC, which is known as 929 Asbury Avenue and 1000 First Avenue, lots and block as designated in the agenda. Mr. Karras?
If I may, thank you. For the record, my name is Andrew Karras. I'm an attorney with the firm of Fox Rothschild, and I'm here on behalf of Partners Property LLC. This is a continuation of a hearing or hearings with regard to property 929 Asbury Avenue and also 1000 First Avenue. They are applications that are being heard together for utilization of the property as the East Coast headquarters for my client. I'm going to continue with the testimony. There are a number of revisions following discussions that we had at the last hearing that will address those revisions to the plans tonight. Start with Daphne.
If I may, do you swear affirm that your testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And state your name for the record, spelling your last name, please.
Daphne Galvin, Galvin.
Ms. Galvin.
Daphne, you're obviously familiar with this application, am I correct?
Yes.
And as a result of the hearings that we've had, there have been a additional revisions made to the site plan prepared relative to these two sites, am I correct?
Correct.
All right, what I'd like to do is go through those revisions. Let's first identify the revised plan, so we have that, and then we'll go specifically through the revisions that we made.
Sure, the revised plans are, cover sheet is shown on the screen right now, preliminary final major site plan and variance application, prepared by Partner Engineering and Science, and this set of plans is revised through June 3rd of 2022.
I believe we are up to A9.
A9, we're starting. Correct. So this will be exhibit A9, revised plans dated
June
June
3rd.
3rd.
June 3rd, thank you.
If you can go through, please, the revisions that were made as a result of the hearing that we had.
Sure, I'm going to go through, there's 3 or 4 sheets specifically that I'll talk about. It's the easiest way to go through the revisions. So right now what we have shown is the title sheet, which is sheet 1 of 10. On the title sheet, we've added a general note along the right-hand side, number 20. It's the note known as the good neighbor note, which requires that the finished side of any fencing installed has to face the neighbor and not the applicant. The other revisions that have been made are tucked away in the zone tables and the list of variances and waivers. I'm going to go through those pretty quickly. The Asbury Avenue parcel, which is the lot 11 parcel, that zone table is in the lower left corner. We've reduced the impervious coverage that was previously proposed from 96.8% down to 94.9%. That results in a total reduction of about 5% of impervious on the subject parcel. We've also reduced the number of signs from 3 to 2, and 2 is a permitted number, so we no longer need a variance for the number of signs proposed. We've also reduced the total area of the proposed signs. That's been reduced down to 32.3 square feet, where 40 square feet is allowed, so again, we're now permitted the proposed signage. We shifted fencing that was proposed along the right-of-way lines to respect the 1-foot offset that the that the city requires, again eliminating any deviation from that setback requirement. We've eliminated numerous variances related to signage and the fence setback, and we've also eliminated the design waiver for not providing planting islands within the parking lots, which I'll show on a future plan. That's relative to the First Avenue site. Relative to the Asbury Avenue site. On First Avenue, we've also reduced the impervious from 75.3% down to 73.4%. That results in a reduction of about 17% of impervious area on that parcel. And we also eliminated the design waiver associated with not providing planting islands within that parking lot, which I'll show on a future sheet. And then with respect to parking on both sites, since they function as a single parking facility, we've reduced the total number of parking spaces from 68 to 66, and that's a result of incorporating the planted islands as well as the EV parking spaces and the credit associated with EV parking spaces. So with 66 proposed spaces, we still meet the requirement of 65. The next sheet we're going to look at is sheet number 3, which is known as the layout sheet. And I'll go through just a bulleted list of the revisions that we made to this sheet. In the upper right-hand corner, we've added an insert that shows the internal ground floor building layout. It also shows external parking, traffic circulation for trucks accessing the site from Asbury Avenue, coming in and working their way out counterclockwise out to Langford to exit the site. We've added existing sidewalk dimensions within the right-of-ways along all of the public streets. We've added a driveway setback at Langford, where the exit drive from the Asbury Avenue site exits out onto Langford. We've added 1 EV parking space at each location. On the Asbury site, it's the first parking space as you come in on the left off of Asbury Avenue. And on the First Avenue site, it's the southeasterly corner where it's adjacent to the walkway that would connect to the main parcel across Langford. So we have a total of 2 EV parking spaces. We've shifted the fence along the right-of-ways to respect the 1-foot setback that the city requires, which eliminates the variance. We've also extended the sidewalk on Asbury Avenue out to meet the existing bus stop area, Previously, that was shown as being a full landscape strip in there, but we put in a small section of sidewalk to accommodate the bus stop. We've added planted islands within the parking lots, as I mentioned before. On the Asbury Avenue site, we've added 3 landscaped islands, one here, one a little bit further north, and then one up in the northeast corner. And then on the First Avenue site, we've added 2 planted islands. One here, where I'm circling right now, and then one a little further south over here. So those 2 locations are along Langford. And there'll be testimony.
Excuse me, weren't you gonna do where the cars, where you make the turn to go out to Langford, that triangle, weren't you gonna make that a planting?
Yeah, we had looked at that, and then actually one of the board members had mentioned putting something in the northeast corner up in here, and we found that by putting the additional landscape island in that northeast corner and putting 1 parallel parking space in adjacent to that island, it left this area open for cars maneuvering as opposed to having a tree in the middle of the parking lot. We thought that this configuration worked better.
It'll be a striped off area.
Yeah, it's striped off, and it results in the same number of planted islands and the same number of parking spaces, so we just thought the configuration was better.
Sorry, don't want to interrupt, let me just run the professional, she has, we have a quick question here, so. Do you swear from the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, I do.
State your name for the record.
Tom Miller, board planner.
Doug Cleland, board engineer.
All right, thank you both.
I'm sorry, Ms. Scott, could you just clarify the number of parking spaces again, because I think you said 66 spaces, but
Yeah.
I think it's 64.
Okay, so it was my understanding that by adding in the 2 EV spaces.
No, how many
How many
spaces are
physical
provided
parking
physically?
spaces? 64.
Okay.
Okay?
That's what exists for the
That's
plan.
what's proposed.
Okay.
We get credit for 66, but there's only 64. That's the EV parking.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it would,
Well, there's a couple different ways you can do it.
right, but the thing is, physically, there will be 34 spaces on the Asbury Avenue site and 30 on the other.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I was just going over the landscaped islands, the planting islands within the parking lot. So there's 3 on the Asbury Avenue site and 2 on the First Avenue site. That also eliminated the design waiver. We also, on the First Avenue site, we had shifted the parking lot 5 feet to the west, and that had been discussed at the previous hearing. We just formalized it on the plan now. So we're going to go to one more sheet. This is going to be sheet number 4, right there. So this is the grading, drainage, and utility plan. And we revised the grading to address the layout changes that I just spoke about on sheet number 3. And we also addressed the insight comments regarding steep slopes on the First Avenue site. There was a concern about trying to salvage part of the parking lot. So we've modified the grading on this site to flatten that out because there was a concern about it being too steep. And as part of these revisions, we also updated the stormwater management report to include a more detailed analysis of runoff to adjacent properties, just to be sure that there was no impact on those properties. And what we've shown is that there's no increase in runoff to the adjoining parcels. There's other sheets in the set of plans. The landscape plan is sheet 5, the lighting plan is sheet number 6. There's details associated with that that'll be discussed by the landscape architect. Sheets 7 and 8 within the set are actually the soil erosion and sediment control plans and detail sheets, so those have been revised as needed to just stay consistent with the layout and grading changes. And then sheet number 10 is the construction detail sheets, which had some minor changes on it as a result of those other changes. The next thing, yeah, we're going to go to the next sheet. So we also prepared what I refer to as a cross-section exhibit. This is...
We're going to identify that as A10.
Yeah, it's identified as the cross-section exhibit. It's also dated June 3rd of 2022. This plan was prepared at the request of one of the board members at the last hearing. Along the left side of the sheet, we have a copy of the landscape plan for the First Avenue site. And right about through the center of the parcel, we have a section line where we cut a section, section AA, so that we can see what the, in section view, what the existing condition is and also what's proposed. That section is drawn over here on the right side. And I'll take you first through the existing configuration, starting on the left side over here. We have the adjoining building, which is at 1004 First Avenue. That building's about 15 feet high and is about 5 feet from the property line. And then we hit the property line and we come in about 5 feet, headed to the east, and that's where the existing one-story building is. That building's a total of about 20 feet high and extends about halfway across the site. And then from that point, continuing east, it's just an existing paved area that runs all the way out to the existing sidewalk along Langford. And then just beyond the sidewalk is a depressed driveway apron that runs almost the entire length of Langford Street. So that's the existing condition. In the proposed condition, obviously the building at 1004 remains. At the property line, we're going to install a 6-foot-high board-on-board fence. We also have now a 5-foot landscape strip between the fence and the beginning of the parking lot. And then this portion right in here where the old building is a combination of parking spaces on the left, a driveway aisle down the center of the parking lot, and then when we get to the easterly side of the parking lot, we have either the landscaped planting islands or parking spaces, depending on where the section is taken. And we've got proposed landscaping in there. We also have immediately at the edge of the parking spaces a 4-foot-high fence that has an open style, because we had agreed to make that change at the last hearing, to keep any of the fences along the right-of-ways as an open style fence, only 4 feet high. Continuing towards Langford, we've got some landscaping, and all the landscaping that's shown on here will be further discussed by the landscape architect. So we've got some smaller plantings, some shrubs, and then we've got street trees proposed. We continue our way out to Langford. We are salvaging the existing sidewalk that's there, but we're going to rip out the driveway apron that runs along the entire length and replace that driveway apron and depressed curb with a grass strip and a full-face curb. So we eliminate that open driveway along the entire stretch of Langford. And that's everything.
That's all the questions I have. I believe in terms of the reports that were generated, there were 2 updated reports from CCH and also Insight. I believe her testimony covers all that has to do with engineering. I don't think there's anything additional to offer versus comment. Any questions from the board?
So thank you for preparing the section, very helpful to see. My one question is, it looks like your grade is dropping on the easterly side, so your cars will be slightly pitched towards the street?
Yes, so in general, the site goes from west to east.
Okay, and so how are you dealing with the stormwater? Are you channeling it, or does it just sort of shed right to the street?
It sheet flows off, so there's no curb proposed along the eastern edge of the parking lot, and it's graded such that it's just a kind of a wide, broad drainage across the edge. It's not concentrated anywhere such that it would create an erosion problem. It's just sheet flow across the parking lot and then over the edge, which is pretty much what it's doing now. We just flattened it out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, now there's it's all pavement now.
Right,
so.
and we're taking that out and we're putting in the landscaping. But it's the same general pattern for the.
I guess we'll just have to check with your landscape architect to make sure that the plant species that have been selected are capable of dealing with that level of water flow erosion and chemical
Okay.
salt stuff.
Respond to that.
Yeah.
I'd just like to ask Ms. Miller if you've looked at these changes and how do they compare with your latest report?
Well, as far as the engineering,
Yeah, as far as this testimony.
that, we really didn't have any concerns about that. They've reduced the fence height, all the other things we really have comments on are related to the landscapes and the lighting.
And from Insight, but
Yeah, couple of just quick questions. The comment number 18D, I just wanted to clarify the color temperature of the light, the proposed lighting.
Why don't we do this? Let's identify these reports, since we're making reference to them. I think we're on
P3.
P3 is going to be the Insight report dated June 22nd, 2022. And why don't we do this? Identify as P4 the CCH report that has revision dated June 22nd, 2022.
So I just wanted to clarify what color temperatures were proposed. I don't know if it was clear on the plan.
I think it's the 2700K, but Bill McCollum will test me.
Right. Comment number 19, I just wanted to confirm that you would add the any proposed utility connections to compare to the plan if you discovered we needed any.
Yes, yes, we're still working on the utility.
I believe we agreed to that condition.
Okay. And then we had spoke about this previously, the drainage of the roof leaders, just that as of right now, they go through the sidewalk and it's kind of a disrepair, but you had agreed, I believe, to repair those as needed.
Correct.
Okay. And you can provide a detail for those?
Yes.
That was it.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Your architect will cover the fence style along Asbury Avenue?
Yeah, I mean, I can generally tell you that along any of the public streets, it's the open picket style,
Okay,
and that along the side and the rear property lines would be the board-on-board for this screening.
great.
But I believe at the last hearing, that's what we agreed to.
Yeah.
You're going to have a detail of that,
He's got some samples and some.
okay, when he testifies, it's fine. Okay, we open this up to questions from the public. Have a motion to open it up.
So moved.
Second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Open for public questioning of this witness only.
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Public questioning closed.
Good evening. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you just again state your name for the record, spelling your last, please?
Antonio Scalise, S-C-A-L-I-S-E.
Thank you, Mr. Scalise.
Okay.
We're here to go through revisions from the last hearing that we had relative to the architectural plans. What I'd like to do is have you put the plans up, they are up, and we're going to identify those for the record, and then we'll go through specifically the revisions that you have made. Sure. All right, so we're going to mark as A11 revised plans, and what's the revision?
6/3/22. Okay, so I'll talk about the signage, I guess, first, being that I have the image up. We revised this drawing, which was part of our submission, which we reduced the square footage of the signage. So on the Langford side, we have 6.5 square feet, where 40 is required. And on the Asbury Avenue sign, we only now have the partner, so on the parking lot side, which is facing east, it no longer says engineer.
Remove that letter line.
Yes,
And you're making reference to page 815, am I correct?
yes, sir, yes. And partner engineering, therefore, that square footage is 25.83 square feet, again, where 40 square feet is required.
A max of 40, correct?
Correct, max of 40, yes. Just to kind of summarize the elevation, so what we ended up, really the major change was we kept the coping detail along the top of the parapet. So what you see here, can everybody hear me?
Hang on.
Sure.
You know, that'll whack this thing off or something.
Shut this over your toe.
So as you can see on our existing view from Asbury Avenue, there's the undulating coping along the top of the building. We maintain that in our design And these are new renderings now that are reflective of essentially the coping being maintained, both on the Langford side and obviously Asbury Avenue and of course the parking lot side. Again, this just shows the Langford side, which kind of shows the undulating. This is again as existing, the coping along Langford, that there's a little bit of a change. The lighting we also changed now is dark sky and is fully clipped on the top. And we're just, this rendering represents that.
And we'd accept it as a condition on the application, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
What's the coping material? Is that stone?
Yeah, I think it could be stone, yeah, yes, stone.
And is that new lighting that's under the blue metal cladding at the corner?
Here? I'm sorry, in this area?
Yeah, I know, like in my drawing. No, it sort of shows like under that shade of blue.
There is a strip of
Underlighting?
lighting,
Yes.
underlighting,
Okay.
yes, on there, yes, correct. I think for the most part, that was the major changes. There's really,
Let's talk about the fencing.
sure. So I have a sample of the fencing along the property lines, of what it will look like. It's a board-on-board aluminum. This is a set of the color. I can pass it around. On Asbury Avenue, we were not able to get a sample, but I do have a photo that we can.
Mark, this is A12, and that is reflective of the open slat fencing that we
Yeah, the
use.
open fencing that we can use as, just to give you an example. And it would be in that bronze color, the same color.
So the open pickets, what are the dimensions? We'll see from the pictures.
I don't have that exactly, but it's see-through. You'll see the photograph. It's pretty open.
And how tall is it on Asbury Avenue?
That was on Asbury Avenue, correct?
How tall?
4 feet.
Yeah, I believe it was 4 feet, yes. Yes. Yes, 4 feet.
I think the roof line looks really good. I know it was under duress, though. I mean, I love it.
Good.
I think it adds an appropriate rhythm, and it will fit in with everything else in a way. I know that you've tried to take a contemporary expression and add to it. I think it looks good.
Now, with regard to the fencing, we're not attaching any fencing to any adjoining properties.
No.
That's all the questions I have.
Anybody from the board have any questions?
And again, I believe that covers relatively all the comments in the association report and the insight.
You have your landscape architect?
I did, over next.
Okay. Anything from our professional?
So-
John, I'm sorry. Do you have a question? No.
Can you just clarify about the lighting? So which fixture type is the one that's in the blue band?
There's just to light the band itself, it's like a LED strip lighting.
So that's not in the lighting schedule?
Um,
I don't see anything called
Okay.
strip lighting.
it should have been, I'm not sure why it wasn't.
So we got flood optic. That's the recessed round.
Is it just in that cladding or is it the other one as well?
The idea was that, on the corner cladding for sure, it was intended.
And is it just underneath the top?
Just underneath,
Not-
yes.
Not the vertical?
It was meant to be along the vertical and the horizontal as well.
And that would be on the other side too then as well?
Yes. It's a very low, it would be well under any requirements. It's not meant to be a bright element.
And it's only down.
Yes, yes. Correct.
And we'll amend the plans as a condition of any approval.
Make sure it's included in
Sure.
the lighting schedule.
Is the vertical partner lit up, well, I guess that would be your lighting, is that lit up?
The lighting is lit, it's an LED light, yes, that only, it's,
Where it says no, I mean this one, the vertical.
where it says partner engineering? Oh, are you talking about the vertical element or the letter?
Vertical element,
No, there's no lighting.
but partner itself is lit up.
Partner
so
is
that's
lit,
like
yes, and
translucent.
it's under, I have the, if you give me 1 second, let me pull it up. It's, sorry, 0.1 foot candles, very low.
Right, but as we note in the report, there's some other specifications, like the amount of blue light that it emits, so we'll need some more detail to
Okay.
make sure it conforms.
Well, it would absolutely conform.
We'll add it to the plans and it will inform. Again, as a condition.
Any other questions from our professionals?
Would you mind sending me that same detail of the fence that was presented tonight? The picture?
Sure.
The frontage.
Yeah, we're gonna leave that with the board and then we'll have additional details.
Any other questions from the board or professionals? I want a motion to open it to the public for questioning of this witness.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Open to public questions of this witness only? No questions heard?
Move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And name for the record again, spelling your last.
William McCollum, McCollum.
What I'm gonna do is for his testimony, I'm gonna make reference to A9, which is the site plan, sheets 5 and 6.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Okay, so we're gonna start with that. All right, so that's gonna be A13. Is the landscape plan that we have up on the board.
Okay, as to the changes in landscape and lighting design, since the last presentation, the lighting design itself has not been changed since the last presentation I made. There was a note added to the plan about photoelectric sensors and timers to control the lights, and there was a comprehensive isolux pattern line shown for the sites as a whole. Onto landscape, starting with 929 Asbury Avenue. Within the planting islands that Daphne testified to each have one Zelkova tree added to match the other 4 that were originally proposed with mulch in those beds. And the Hamlin grass has been replaced with a native grass, a panicum, which is also switchgrass. And those were the landscape changes on 929 site. Moving up to First Avenue. As discussed in the last meeting, along Langford, the trees have been realigned. There's no net loss in trees, they're just repositioned. There are now 4 street trees along Langford, which are London plane tree. And then within the 2 new islands, we have 2 red maples. Also along Langford, in front of the evergreen hedge to the east, at the board's request, we have added 3 clusters of knockout roses and daylilies to add a little color and a little bit of interest along that area. And then the holly hedge in the northwest corner has been extended to the property line. And those are the changes to the landscape and lighting plans.
Now, if we look at what's been marked as B4 for identification, there are a number of comments from the board's planner with regard to the landscape, am I correct?
Yes.
One of the comments is on page 12, 5.2A, a suggestion to add depth by way of a double staggered row of evergreen shrubs along Langford and First, correct?
Yes.
And we have no objection to that, am I correct?
Correct.
All right, so we're fine with that. We've addressed 5.3, the islands. On 5.6, plant materials, there was a suggestion for different types of plantings, am I correct?
Yes.
Have any issue working with that to comply with revise in accordance with that?
The only issue I do have are the 4 trees on the western side of the First Avenue site. The trees that were suggested are full-size shade trees, and due to site limitations and constraints, the proposed center of the planted tree is about 2.5 feet from the property line and about 7 feet to the next door building. So if we were to put a full-size shade tree, as we know, a neighbor on a property line can do whatever they like. That means we have control of 2.5 feet of that tree. Therefore, once it starts to grow, if they don't like it, they can shear it straight up and kill it. So the columnar trees may not be a first choice, but they are a tree that we can guarantee the health of.
And it works better because of that site limitation, am I correct?
Correct. The rest, just swapping out the different varieties, I'm fine with.
To knock out roses, swapping that?
Yes,
you're
that's
okay
it.
with. That's all the questions I have, Ms. Rose.
The islands where you have the trees in the parking lot.
Yes.
So what is it, just that they planted into, what sort of space are they planted into? Is it something surrounded, or is it just a cutout into the pavement? The islands themselves. The planting
The
islands. where
planting
you have
islands are
trees
surrounded
in-
with curbs, and then within the island on the 929 site will be mulch. On the First Avenue site, I'm not sure if there are curbs around those. There's no curbs around those islands, and those are a decorative stone due to the sheet flow nature of the parking lot, so mulch doesn't wash into the grass.
On the First Avenue parking lot, are there overhead wires, where there were overhead wires?
No,
at all?
No overhead wires around.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Skinamayo, but to clarify, the site plan does show the islands curved on First Avenue.
Okay,
So
sorry.
they're protected, and it does help direct the flow of stormwater to the, the front without crossing over the island.
And there's no wires that we have to worry about then?
No, the wires are on the eastern side of Langford.
And is this type of sheet flow typical? Like, is there any concern? This is sort of more of a question for our engineers.
I mean, my only concern would be if the landscaping was burned to prevent the water from continuing to flow. But it doesn't sound like that's what.
No, it will not be burned, and the stone will slow the flow down. And all plants are tolerant of that kind of water, and if we do make some replacements, they will also be tolerant.
And it's stone, not mulch?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any.
Right, and we had recommended against using stone for the mulch because, heat island and compaction and all the problems that we acknowledge stone mulch has. So there's, I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
Go ahead, keep going.
So I understand the, engineering solution. We have wheel stops, concrete wheel stops in front of this hedge area. So, we kind of have the overhang of the cars sort of controlled. We have the, ability of cars to roll off out of the parking lot controlled. The pavement edge, I'm not so convinced is controlled, especially if we're going to be sheet flowing water off that edge.
There's also a fence, yeah?
Yeah, and it's right there.
4 feet,
So,
yeah.
I'm a little worried about long-term maintenance dealing with snow plowing.
But that's like any property.
It is. So we're acknowledging that there are maintenance issues that can become long-term property maintenance issues. And we're at a point here where we can, as part of site plan approval, go with our best practices. So And as I had said, in our report, we don't recommend the stone mulch because of the negative impacts that has on the planting bed. But if we use hardwood mulch, which is preferred, then yeah, it's gonna wash off. So I'm a big fan of curbing, if you can't tell.
Well,
Well, the curbing would.
But it creates stormwater
Create-
management problem, right?
Yeah. It's from.
So I don't know if there's a way to, collect as sort of like a rain garden approach. We create a divot in that slope. The other negative thing about the sheet flow is that means it's gonna perpetually weep across the sidewalk
That
in the
was
winter
actually my
and create an icing condition.
concern, is that there's nothing really done to direct the water.
It's always gonna just sort
It's
of
always
leak
just gonna
out of
be-
the sod
Even if it's
across
not,
the sidewalk.
even if
Yep.
it's not icy. But I guess the question I have is, how could, you're putting wheel stops in. Can your wheel stop? No, you can't, because your curb has to be beyond your wheel stop. I don't know. It would be nice to see a more green-friendly approach here, but
We've made numerous revisions. to the
understood.
plan
I'm not
to
pushing
appreciate
it. Understood.
and
Uh,
at the suggestion of the board,
My,
that's
my,
what we came up.
my only remaining question is, around, there will be no vehicles stored here overnight, like, what was the approach around vehicles stored here overnight? Or do you have an anticipation of what your general utilization of your total parking would be?
There was testimony on this 2 hearings ago. Vehicles, they may have company vehicles on the other lot, not on this lot.
And then what do you expect your general utilization of your total parking, your 64 spots? Is that what you testified?
Correct.
Yeah, like, do you expect it to be 80% most of the
We've
time?
gone through all this during the prior testimony. This witness is not here to address that.
Oh,
That already had been addressed with prior witnesses. It's an office.
No, I understand, I just wanted to be reminded. I acknowledge your point, I should be asking your landscape architect, but we would just like you to remind us what your utilization would be when he's done.
I've got a question for our professionals. We've had a similar problem in the waterfront redevelopment area concerning the stone mulch. And that issue was solved by a grass strip between to separate the stone mulch from the sidewalk. Is this something that is
There is grass.
applicable here, or are we going to have a problem?
Yes,
There is grass.
Yeah, there's a grass strip between where the stone mulch ends and the sidewalk
referring to
begins.
this.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, so that space will be slightly reduced, but, there's still about 4 feet between the property line and the edge of the sidewalk where the grass strip is. So even when we get the double staggered row hedge, it's gonna thicken up that strip, that landscape strip, but it won't push the mulch that far close to that much closer to the sidewalk, sorry.
And if I recall your testimony, you said that you're going to stagger the evergreens on the west side so they don't form a straight line to give you some...
Correct.
Okay.
One note about staggering those evergreens. Well, no, that's fine, never mind.
Okay, any other...
No, I think at the last hearing, we asked them to come back with specifics, answering some very, very good questions. I think they addressed all those tonight, I mean, to my satisfaction, and anything we've asked for from day one, they said they will comply and go along with anything the planning board, the professionals want to do. So I think you guys have done an excellent job coming back for the third time, and this is a northeast center of a major corporation that, you know, Asbury Park is welcoming. But again, we had to do our due diligence. I think great questions were asked. Sorry it took 3 times, but again, some of the meetings were only an hour, hour and a half. So I know you were under a time frame to begin with to get this up and going because of previous where you're at now. So as far as like coming back tonight with anything we asked for in the last meeting, I think you've done more than sufficient as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Can we open it to questions from the public?
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Hey, one quick question. Hey, one of the, Mike Goonan, Michael Goonan, 1101 Ocean Avenue. One quick question. At one of the previous hearings, you talked about providing some accommodation for the bus stop on the Asbury Avenue front. Is there any, is that gonna happen? Oh,
Yeah, we added concrete onto the ground, so you're not walking across the road.
perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public questions put.
I have one last witness, our planner, David Roberts, will be quick just to go through and support the C variance that we are requesting.
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, my name is David Roberts. The address is 37 Bayview Avenue, Bayville, New Jersey, and I swear to tell nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. You continue.
Mr. Roberts, you appeared before this board on numerous occasions, am I correct?
Well, I think for this board, I'm just thinking about that. I think it might have been 20 years ago for the Salvation Army expansion. But for other zoning board on a couple of occasions. For anyone who I may not be familiar with, I'm a licensed professional planner. I'm practicing for 41 years, 10 of which between 1985, January 2nd to be exact, and March of 95, I was the first city planner in Asbury Park. So I was involved in the early days and was the author of the first land development ordinance for the city, some of which still persists as of today, including some of the drawings I did during council meetings on onion skin paper with a pencil on a straight edge, because back then the city didn't have computers. Some of them are still in the ordinance today. So that was 10 years out of my career. Since then I've been practicing 22 years in the private sector. Most recently, the past 6 years, I'm the director of planning and zoning for the township of Toms River. And I have a side practice, DG Roberts Planning Design LLC. Also for the record, I have also been past president of the New Jersey chapter of the American Planning Association, New Jersey chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architect, as I'm also a licensed landscape architect. And I have credentials with
Expert in
You didn't get a chance to talk about redevelopment yet.
Well, that's true, but this, of course, I will be back for a redevelopment hearing.
You're familiar with this application, am I correct?
The PowerPoint, yeah, thanks. Yes, I am.
What I'd like you to do is go through your testimony in terms of the variance relief that's requested and the applicability of the plans to that variance relief.
Be with me in 2 seconds. Basically, just to start out, thank you, Antonio. And I'm going to try to stay near the mic and operate the PowerPoint. Yes, this is a pre-existing building, and as has been referenced before, I'm going to try to go through these relatively quickly because I know you have another application behind us, and you've heard a tremendous amount of testimony over the last 2 hearings, and have been working back and forth with the applicant to perfect and modify the application. So this will be a little bit of a review from a planning standpoint. This first slide is just a copy of your zoning map, and it describes the two sites shown with the arrows, shown on the west side of Main Street, along one of the main arteries into the city on Asbury Avenue. One site, 929, fronting on Asbury Avenue on the corner of Langford. The other site at the opposite end of Langford at 1000 First Avenue. As you can see, there's the sizes of the parcel, 20,250 square feet for 929 and 11,250 square feet for 1000 First Avenue. And then this is really just a close-up of the zoning map that's actually on the site plan. But you can see that the two sites are divided into two zones. The zone line runs through the middle of the block, which is typical in Asbury Park blocks because of the uniform configurations of many of the blocks. Being either 200 to 300 feet wide from end to end, and then being divided down the middle. So the 1000 Asbury Avenue is in the light industrial zone. On the other end of the block, 929, the bigger piece, is in the business zone, the B zone. And again, just an overhead shot, again taken from the site plan cover sheet that shows the existing configurations of the buildings on the properties. 929 Asbury has two buildings on it. The building in question, which is being proposed to be adaptively reused and rehabilitated, and then another building, a garage building, would be removed and replaced with surface parking. On 1000 Asbury Avenue, just to recap, the property has a one-story building on the property currently vacant. It appears to be previously used for a place of worship, and effectively both properties are vacant at this point in time. This is simply a 2021 Google Earth view of both properties, just to give a little bit of a visual. Many of the conditions that are in these two photographs have already been described verbally by various experts over the course of the past two hearings. But visually you can get a feel, even though I'm sure all the board members have been by these sites numerous times, especially Asbury Avenue being one of the main ways in and out of town. Drive by this property all the time. One of the things I would, just a point of observation, back between 85 and 95, when I was serving as the city planner and effectively the chief of zoning, one of our problems in this section of Asbury Avenue was the wholesale used car industry. Many of these properties were effectively covered with cars. They were on the properties, they were on the sidewalks, they were parked on the sidewalks. It was a tremendous problem. I know Donna certainly remembers those days as well. One of the things I noticed driving there recently, in just recent years, and that would have been at least 27 years later, since I left 27 years ago, is even though the inundation by the cars is not apparent, the buildings are still there and haven't really been touched, from what I can tell. In fact, the entire Asbury Avenue corridor, for the most part, looks very similar to me today than it did 27 years ago. One of the things I think that I find in this application is a tremendous opportunity, and I realize that the board has already seen a site plan right next door to this property for a mixed-use building that was approved recently, hasn't been built yet. I think you've heard through the testimony that there's a lot at stake for my client with respect to this property. So I think you can rest assured that what has been proposed will take place in a very expeditious manner, because they need to be able to relocate. And I think this will be the banner of Asbury Avenue in terms of investment, which I think has really been always the city's goal. The city's been, over the years, and it's been, I've been happy to see it all over town, has successfully attracted investment in other parts of town, the waterfront, downtown. Especially happy to see the changes that have happened on Cookman Avenue in those areas, and also on the west side along Springwood Avenue with the recent redevelopment. Asbury Avenue is kind of has been the outlier, and I think from my personal point of view, I'm extremely excited to be part of this application and be seeing this happening. So that's kind of just the kind of the background in terms of, and this is actually the original site plan. This presentation was done in preparation for the first hearing. And as I've been attending the last two hearings and kind of seeing the give and take between the board and the professionals and the applicant's professionals, that obviously, as you heard today in the summary, the application has evolved and been modified. So many of these variances, basically all variances are particular or specific to 929. And what I would say now is a lot of those variances, as you heard Ms. Galvin describe, have been eliminated, such as, I would say, the ones that were within the developer's control or the applicant's control, because this is not a developer. This is just an entrepreneur looking to develop a place of business. But any of the variances having to do with fence setback and specifically the signage, when I first reviewed this, it looked like a pretty straightforward situation with the existing building governing the other setbacks, and trying to add some architectural design elements to the building to make it kind of stand out, had created some of this relief. But it was driven by the fact that the building was either on the property line or slightly encroaching into the right-of-way because of the age of the building. It seems like really now we're down to two main issues. One is the impervious surface coverage, if I could sum it up, and then the second would be given to the building with regard to the setback and the length of the building. Those are both driven by the fact that they're adaptively reusing an existing building. If you might say, well, if that's the hardship, then why not remove the building and start over and build a building with conforming yard areas? I think that would then indicate that it's very unusual where you see a hardship converting into a special reason C2 type argument, which are advancing the purposes of zoning. In this case, preserving the building accomplishes a lot of things that are either related to the purposes of zoning or specifically advancing other purposes of your master plan and other types of references, such as the LEED for neighborhood development rating system, which assigns a credit for, under the green infrastructure and building category, for reusing 50% or more of a pre-existing building. In this case, and that they define that as being the shell and the floors and the roof. In this case, the entire building is being adaptively reused. I think a lot of what has been exchanged between my client and the board have to do with the fact that the new use for the building is not the same as the previous use. The previous use had a retail outlet on the ground floor and then storage and warehousing on the upper floors. As a result of that effectively obsolete use of vertical storage, there was no windows or very few windows in the upper floors of the building. In terms of adapting the building to an office use, my client's architect has tried to use more of an older industrial factory type style to apply to the building. The board has responded by saying, we like the fact that there'll be more windows, but can you retain some of the features of the building? The building effectively has few features, but one of the features it does have is the roof line. The client has responded to that, and I think I agree with the board in terms of the reaction to the result of that. So I think that there's a lot of, and I would just say in terms of getting to kind of and really before I do that, on 1000 Asbury, I think there's been adjustments made in terms of shifting the parking lot, adding landscaping, modifying the fencing. Really, in this particular case, there was never an impervious coverage issue. It was more about the landscaping, the drainage, things that you've been talking about, adding the landscape islands, which removed one of the design waivers. But one of the things I would point out here is that in this case, even with the pre-existing plan, we had a much lower impervious coverage than is allowed, because in the industrial zone, now you go from 80% to 90%. And there was only originally a 75% proposed, and it's now been reduced to 73.4%. It's a 17% reduction overall. But also, I will point out that there's twice the amount, and now more than twice the amount of landscaped area in the parking lot in terms of going from originally from 10% to 24.7%. That's now also been increased because of the landscape changes that the board has effectuated with my client, specifically with the addition to the planting islands. And then to get back to that one other issue on 929, which is impervious surface coverage, you heard before that its existing coverage is 100%. The requirement's 80%. The original site plan showed a reduction from 100% to 96.8%. With the addition of the planting islands, it's now down to 94.9%. It's obviously still more than 80, but one thing I would point out to the board in terms of a C2 type argument for this is that when we originally created these zoning standards, going back to the original land development ordinance, Asbury Park at the time was considered to be a regional center under the state plan that was adopted in 1992. Those centers effectively went by the wayside, and Asbury Park is now in the metropolitan planning area 1. Because of that, the impervious coverage would have been 80%. It was 80% when we wrote these standards back in the 80s. That was based effectively on a CAFRA standard. The CAFRA standard has now changed in terms of the CAFRA regulations, where for a metropolitan planning area, which is the metropolitan coastal area, the impervious coverage is based on the higher of the existing impervious coverage or the 80%. In this case, the existing impervious coverage was 100%. So I think in this case, given the fact that you have an existing building that you're trying to preserve, you're trying to take the rest of the site and modify it to serve that building with parking, to be able to get down to from 100% to 94.9% is probably the best that can be done reasonably with the existing conditions that the design was trying to work with. So I would say in terms of that situation, you're advancing a number of purposes of zoning, and that there's a greater benefit for approving an application like this with a reduction in impervious coverage than sticking to the 80%. So I'll go on to the purposes of zoning that I would proffer. These are pretty standard. One is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use for development of all lands in the state in a manner which would promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. In my case, or in this situation, I would argue that approving this application, allowing this development to occur on this site, and effectively two corners between Langford First and Asbury, would bring in a major employer that would stimulate the local economy. It would symbolize investment on Asbury Avenue. It would effectively kind of bring attention to Asbury Avenue in terms of the fact that there's an investment occurring there. A lot of benefits to go along with that would promote the general welfare. The second I would point out would be to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of a lot of agricultural, residential, recreation, commercial, industrial, and open space, public and private, in this case private, according to the respective environmental requirements. And we've already gone over the needs of the client in terms of space, parking, and then how they tried to make this fit and dress up both of the two sites with landscaping and architectural improvements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. And then I think the last point is probably one that you've heard a lot, but I think if you weigh the Google Earth images, or if drive by, as I drove by there this evening, against what's being proposed, I think it's fairly easy to conclude that there would be a desirable visual environment created through creative development techniques, good civic design and development, especially with the modifications that have been made. And I would point out, with regard to that in your master plan, as we start to work our way finally into the negative criteria, that in the section 5.2 under the land use plan, there's references made to things that remain relevant from the last master plan. One of those things is focus on the appearance and function of the Asbury Avenue, Springwood Avenue, Main Street, and Memorial Drive corridors. It's necessary in order to address vacancies and unappealing character. I think you can agree that both properties, 1000 Asbury and 1000 First and 929 Asbury, would meet the description of being vacant and unappealing, having unappealing character. There are also additional standards just to emphasize the importance of reusing existing development that I would like to point out. And I'm sorry, Irene, I meant to give you a copy of this. Done that while we're booting it up. And the Urban Design Standard 5.3.1.2, it encourages new and repurposed buildings, and I underlined repurposed, to add richness and a sense of creativity to Asbury Park's built environment. And 5.3.1.3, that infill that complements the context and qualities of the neighborhood. I think the board has devoted a lot of energy and attention on that. I'm trying to make that more compliant into the context of the neighborhood through the architectural design, which my client has complied with. So to conclude, I would say that there is obviously no adverse impact on the public welfare, and part of that is that even some of these design waivers with the tweaks that were done with the parking on Asbury on First Avenue, Asbury Park has always had a balancing act with parking to try to make sure that whatever new uses come in, try to provide their own parking so that they're not overburdening any street parking. I think it's been shown that this application or this use will provide for its own parking and effectively allow the street to continue to be used as it is now by others in the neighborhood. That's a public benefit.
There's no substantial impairment in the zone plan ordinance.
That I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And as I think as in conclusion, that the rehabilitation will bring employees and clients to the city. These are benefits added to the removal of vacant buildings, transformation of the corner into attractive office building, improve the visual environment, set an example for future development in Asbury. The grant of the relief would advance at least three purposes of zoning: reduce reliance on public street parking by increasing the amount of parking and complying with the parking requirement. And this is an important point. Even with all of the trying to make the use and the parking fit the two sites, there are two zoning standards that are the most important, in my opinion, with respect to weighing and evaluating building intensity, and that's height and floor area ratio, and no relief is needed for either one of those two standards. And then obviously the use is consistent with the recommendation of the master plan to address vacancies and appealing character along Asbury Avenue. That would be the extent of my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions from the board?
So the only variances with relief you're looking for is the encroachments of like the cladding and stuff like that?
There's, as reflected in the planner's report, if I can just grab it. There's the building length, there is the impervious coverage, and a couple in section 71. The building entrances, I would assert that we provided testimony that the building entrance, it is a main entrance, consequently a variance is not needed, although we have two main entrances, both in the parking lot and on the street, that comply with 30-71.5H8. I would suggest that you don't need a variance for the pedestrian-friendly design in Asbury Avenue. I would assert that this does comply with that. And window transparency, there's a variance with regard to that. That's the extent that's needed. Any questions for our planner?
Any questions from the board? How about from our professionals? I'd like to get a motion to open to the public for questions to the planner.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Questions open to the public for this witness only? Hearing no questions,
Motion to close?
Move. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That concludes my presentation. If I can just sum up briefly, and I say briefly, just a few words. What we presented in this application, I would submit, is a gateway project. Having done work here for at least 15 years in Asbury Park, we've been waiting for projects like this to move over, to start developing the west side, add character, add architectural interest. And I think we're starting to see it. I think we should be proud of this type of application, welcome this type of application into the city and this type of business that wants to do business and have a headquarters here in the city. With that, I submit.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to open to public comments at this time?
Yes, I just want to make sure that our professionals are satisfied with the comments made by the applicant concerning your reports that, and they've answered your questions to your satisfaction.
Yes.
And, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I mean, unless the board has
Well,
questions they want to flesh out about any of those, but.
Well, and you're satisfied, and you've worked out with the landscape architect your suggestions concerning planting materials, and you're all satisfied with that?
Well, they agreed to the changes.
Okay. And I just have one question, and it's just a clarification. The design now has moved one of the planting areas from the parking lot on 929 to the northeast corner of the parking lot. And the area that was on the northeast corner of the building that was going to be landscaped is now going to be striped to accommodate the turning movements of vehicles.
Yeah, I'm looking at page, or sheet, page 3 of 10 of the plans that were identified as, just want to make sure I get the right reference. A9, we have 3 planting areas, 3 planting islands. One in the northeast corner, you have a couple spaces, one before that, and then one more planting island that's about 5 spaces before that, closer to Asbury Avenue.
Yeah, and the area that was going to be a planting area now is going to be striped, and basically it's to accommodate the turning movements of any vehicles in there. Right?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Oh, one other question. There was reference to a loading zone, and I don't think that was addressed in any of the testimony.
There's no loading zone that is in the parking lot. There has been testimony that, for the most part, it's like UPS type.
You didn't need a loading zone?
Yeah, we don't need one. They'll pull up, drop off packages.
Okay. I'd like to have a motion to open the meeting to the public for their comment.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Daniel Scannell and a second by Clayton. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Please step up to the microphone if you have a comment. You will have 3 minutes on the clock. Please state your name and address, and Mr. Beekman will swear you in. Do we have any public comments?
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, at this point, Mr. Beekman, would you just recap any kind of conditions that still remain open, and so that we can get a motion concerning approval of this application?
So just based on testimony that has been given tonight, as it relates to conditions, I know that the variances requested were related to the impervious surface, the building setback length, and the window transparency, which I heard. conditions have all been met, from what I understand, with regards to the reports that were submitted by the professionals. So,
The encroachments into city right-of-ways are subject to approval by the city council.
That is correct.
Would you speak into the mic so we can hear you?
he just indicated compliance with the professional reports, so the insight report and then the CCH report as well.
Okay. Okay, and standard conditions. Anybody have anything else that would like to consider being added to condition of approval?
I just wanted to say that it's, we appreciate all the attention to all the comments that are brought up, and I agree that I think it'll be a positive project on Asbury.
Can we get a motion to approve this application as amended?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Daniel Shanamayo and a second by Eric Gallipo. We will now take a vote. Mayor John Moore? how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton?
Yes.
James Bonanno?
Yes.
Jim Henry?
Yes?
Jennifer Sauter?
Yes.
Alexis Taylor, are you participating in this?
Nope, I'm not eligible.
Okay, Ms. Taylor is abstaining. Eric Gallipo, how do you
Yes.
vote? Daniel Shanamayo?
Yes.
And so we have a unanimous approval. Congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Thank you.
Do you want to take a short recess to
Okay,
get started, or is it
Might as well.
short recess,
Might as well, right?
5-minute recess.
5-minute recess?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Back in 5
They get a
minutes.
50-day recess.
All right, everyone.
It's never boring.
Take your
Thank you. What's her name? Vesta Isabel. Oh, that's thank you.
Sorry, everyone, please
I'll
take
bring her
your
the
seats
whiskey.
quiet. We'll now take roll. Mayor John Moore,
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton,
Here.
James Bonanno.
Here.
Jim Henry,
Here.
Jennifer Sauter.
Here.
Alexis Taylor.
Here.
Eric Gallipo,
Here.
Daniel Shanamayo.
Here.
And I think that's all of us here. Juanita Barnes is absent, Rick Lambert is still absent, and Robert Kurzak is still absent. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, our next application is JLD Investment Group LLC, dealing with 701, 705 2nd Avenue.
Good evening, Board.
I'm sorry. You can start there. Got it.
Okay, good evening, Board. My name is Matthew Posada. I'm with the law firm Sills, Cummins & Gross, and as stated before, I represent the applicant, JLD Investment Group, LLC. The subject application is for the subject property located at 701 to 705 2nd Avenue. What the applicant is here tonight proposing is a preliminary subdivision application. What they're looking to do is they're looking to take the single lot itself and subdivide it into 6 lots. The 6 lots are being contemplated for residential usage itself. However, we're not proposing any improvements here tonight. We are simply here tonight for the fully conforming preliminary subdivision application, and that only. We do understand that we would have to come back at another night for final subdivision approval. With that,
Okay, I was just going to ask our attorney to explain to the audience what that really means. So if you would.
We'll get to that. I think that what we're going to start out with though real quick.
Okay.
There's going to be just a short statement by an individual, one of the objectors on the matter tonight. I just want to have this this portion of it determined before we move too far forward, if the board wants to move forward. Please,
Which microphone?
just come to the front. Can we turn one of those around? And if you may, just swear you in.
Sure.
So do you swear from the testimony you've got to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Name for the record, please.
Thomas D. Seno.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Pisano.
Hi. Something has come to my attention recently where I think that this board should consider putting this hearing off briefly tonight. There is an objector, Shore Christian Church, who is here, and Shore Christian Church had retained an attorney a few weeks ago to handle their objection, that part of the proceeding. They were all ready to go until Thursday when that attorney called them and said that he's discovered he has a conflict on the case and he won't be coming. They've tried their best to get another attorney, but on that short notice, they couldn't find anybody. Now, if this attorney who claimed the conflict was just anybody, I would expect the board to say, well, that's not really our problem. The twist here is the attorney who said he had a conflict is with the city attorney's office. He works for Ansel. I'm a little bit incredulous that he didn't know weeks ago when he was retained that his firm represented the city of Asbury Park. They've only been doing it for nearly 3 decades. But what he did was he basically shoved a stick in their bicycle spokes and made them crash. And the fact that it's the problem is emanating from the city attorney's office, just makes it seem untoward. Now, I'm not suggesting anything actually untoward is going on, but you always want to be careful of the appearance of propriety. And for someone from the city's attorney's office to, whether intentionally or inadvertently, sabotage them so that they can't go forward because they don't have an attorney, appears to be problematic. And I think in the interest of fairness, due process, fair play, that you adjourn this to give them the chance to get a new attorney so that they can be here and listen to the presentation, make the objections they have to, and if need be, put in their own evidence, which I understand this attorney had told them they were going to do, that they have some evidence about deeds and lots and things like that. I don't really practice land use, so I wouldn't know. But I did want to come and make this objection to it going forward. And again, it's because this emanates from the city's own attorney's office. I think that needs to be repaired by this board. So I'm making an application to adjourn it. I hope one of you will agree and make a motion, and hopefully we can do that.
Let me ask you your affiliation with this application.
I would call myself a co-objector. I, along with somebody else, had plans on purchasing the church, so I want to be an objector myself. And of course, their defense is inured to the benefit of all objectors. So what affects them certainly affects me. And in that regard, that's why I'm here. I'm not representing them, but I am a co-objector along with them.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So, to object, why do they need an attorney? Is it that they have some evidence about the use that's being proposed is prohibited by something that comes with the land?
As I understand it, they sent it to me today. There's apparently a handwritten deed from James Bradley that they believe runs with the land. Now, again, I'm not a land use lawyer, so I didn't analyze it. I can't speak to its merit or not. But I did see it, and it's there. And certainly, again, the only reason why they were told they have to have an attorney to present any kind of a case tonight, that they won't be able to do it without an attorney. And of course, it wouldn't be wise to do it without an attorney. The only reason they don't have one is what the Ansel firm did, and considering their connections with the town.
It's a little bit, but yeah, we won't go that much further. Why don't we hear from the applicant's attorney as well with regard to their position on the matter, and then the board will make a determination.
Hi, we are very sympathetic and we understand their situation, and I just want to highlight just 2 items to this board. Item number A is this was duly noticed as land use hearing pursuant to the municipal land use law. And then number 2, as I stated before, this is for preliminary subdivision approval. We still have to come back for final subdivision approval. So there is no finality to this application here tonight. So respectfully, we'd like to move forward.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
So this comes down to really a decision on the board's end of things. You've heard both sides of what's being proposed as it relates to adjournment. Can there be an appealable situation if you continue? That's a risk that the applicant would necessarily take at this point in time. If you feel like moving forward would unduly prejudice the objector at this stage, that is also something to take into consideration. As the applicant mentioned, it is for preliminary subdivision approval at this stage. There's still a lot of weeks to go. But I don't want to also sway the board either way. It really comes down to your
Okay.
I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Will that objector be prevented from objecting in our from becoming an objector if we proceeded tonight?
No. They wouldn't be able to, they do have questions. Yeah.
But they wouldn't be able to,
Cross-examine.
yeah, they wouldn't be able to cross-examine anybody who spoke.
They would individually be able to, at the public portion of it, but they wouldn't be able to put on an objector's case with counsel asking those questions.
I would like to entertain a motion to move to executive session to discuss this outside of the public domain.
So moved.
Why we
Second.
can't really do that now. No.
Can't do that?
No. This is, we're in the open public on the law as opposed to the motion, so we have to keep it open.
Right. We have to notice for an executive session.
I mean, wouldn't it be that that's an issue for title and for court and not for, not for us, that whatever the suggests us wants to put forward? I mean, if there's something about a deed or whatever, whether it's valid and it prohibits a certain use, is this the proper venue for it anyhow? Is it for court of law to decide?
It may be something we'd have to consider, but there's a restriction on the actual use of the property. To a degree, though, but we're still in the preliminary stages as indicated, so at this point, it's really, we're focusing on the subdivision that's being presented as just the 6 lots, nothing else being requested this evening.
If I could just add, if I may, what they'll lose tonight is having their attorney here making the objections during the presentation, and they can't just read the transcript and repair that. That right of theirs will be gone forever. It's being taken from them, from the city attorney's office, and that's just feels untoward. So there is a real appreciable loss of them not having their attorney.
So.
Is that true?
There will always be, there will be a loss because obviously they're not going to be able to navigate on their own as it relates to asking the proper questions. If there is testimony out there that should be objected to, they just don't have the, I don't know what it calls. There's no know-how to be able to navigate those waters.
Irina?
Yes.
If this board decides to table this application, when was the next date that this could be heard?
I had a feeling you were going to ask that question. So unfortunately, we only have one hearing scheduled for August, but we do have, I believe, an open slot for July 25th of 2022.
So it'd be a month, basically a month?
Correct. And that should give them enough time to retain an attorney.
Will that exceed any allowable time with the board has to act?
What do you think?
That's a good question. Mr. Beekman, this application was deemed complete on May 23rd.
So your 45 days are up.
So you're going to be on summer.
Would the applicant consider extending the time?
Respectfully, like I said before, we would like to proceed tonight. This was a duly noticed matter. It's been before this board now since May 23rd. They were conscientious of the fact that we were going to proceed forward tonight with this application. They did not have an attorney, or at least their attorney advised them. They were conflicted on Thursday. However, my office nor myself received any correspondence until right before we started this land use application. I want to really reiterate to this board again that this is only for preliminary subdivision approval. We still have to come back for final subdivision approval.
Well, I'd just like to point out to the applicant that from my review of your application, you've got an awful lot more on your plans than a subdivision.
Yes, that is correct. That is so that this board itself can contemplate what our proposed use is that we're seeking for, which is, again, what we're looking to do here is we're looking to subdivide the single lot into 6 single-family residential development, right? So 6 lots, each lot is going to have 1 single-family home. With that being said, we thought we'd provide more information, more details, so it'd be easier for this board to visualize. But you're absolutely correct. The only thing we're seeking here is the preliminary subdivision, so all other details, if you will, to some extent, are not before this board.
Okay, do we have any more comments from the board? Any suggestions how anybody would like to proceed?
So the decision we have to make is whether we're going to proceed or
table it,
or table it. But they would have to agree to table it because we can't schedule them within their.
Or they have to renotice.
No, we have to act within 45 days. And the next meeting that's available is beyond the 45 days, so they would have to agree to let us table it. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct?
We'd have to get approval from them to table the matter, to go beyond the 45 days. So it's basically breaking down, does the board feel strongly enough at this point in time as it relates to the rights of the individual that can't retain their own counsel at this point, to have the applicant give the additional time for the hearing to be heard.
And so we go outside the 45 days and they adopt approval already?
No. I mean, so if it does come to that, are you guys going to give the approval to extend to the 45?
May I ask for just a short recess to have an opportunity to speak to my client?
Sure.
We could have a recess, how can he then?
You can have a recess, you can have a recess.
Okay, let's have a recess.
I think we should take a vote for a 5-minute recess.
Please, yes.
So moved. Second. There we go. Whichever.
Thank you. 5-minute recess beginning now. Let's take roll. Mayor John Moore.
Here.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton.
Here.
James Bonato.
Here.
Jim Henry.
Here.
Jennifer Sauter. Here. Alexis Taylor. Here. Eric Galho.
Here.
Daniel Shanamayo.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
Back on the record?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And thank you again for giving us the opportunity to have a short recess so I can discuss this matter with my client. What we'd like to ask this board here tonight is that whether or not we can contemplate having a special hearing that would be before the July 25th date. And if the board would entertain that, what would be the hearing date itself so that we could carry notice to that hearing date?
That's a reasonable request.
Yes, I think that that's something that we should entertain.
Yes.
Thank you.
So just wait on that.
Do you have a suggested date?
I'm available whenever you're available.
How about your engineer?
When is our next
He's not
meeting
leaving my
is what,
side.
July 9th,
Our next meeting is July 11th.
11th? And would it be possible to do it early, like a similar 5:30?
Judging
Oh, we
from
add-
the last time we did that, I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay. I was conveniently not here for the last time we did that.
No, but the only thing about that is, that way all our professionals would, might be able to be here by then. And like you were gonna have from 9 to 10, only an hour tonight. And that way if we start at 5:30, you'll get 5:30 to 7, an hour and a half. So I mean, but if you say, maybe I missed that meeting too where it didn't work, so.
It just went on.
It was.
No, it would have to be, you're starting it and you're ending.
Agreed.
So the real person who scheduled that doesn't get shortchanged.
No, it was more that it was 5:30 to 7 and then 7 to 10. So we were here for 4.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the continuation of K-Hop, correct, Arena?
Correct, yes. And
Oh,
we
that's
do
not
have
one night.
that date, so yeah, it's going to go until 10. I would suggest that it be on a different day completely, and we can start early.
Okay.
Okay.
And the meeting date that you were suggesting for them was what? Was to the 25th, I'm sorry.
The 25th was the date that was
The date that
available.
was outside, so it needs to be in the next 2 weeks.
What about, is the 18th too
Yeah,
late?
about the 18th.
18th's too late also.
Well, I think that they would allow the extension at that point in time if we use.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yes, we would have,
Oh, you allow the
grant an extension
extension?
through the end of July.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
So it's really just,
The 19th is
just,
birthday.
Yeah.
I have that.
it's just really just finding a date that suits everybody and we can lock that in.
I'll be 35.
Of course.
We should make sure that at least 5 people who are here tonight can make it.
Eric, hold on a second.
So
Would you repeat that, Irene?
It's up to the board members which day they would be available. If you wanted to do a different Monday, or we can do a Thursday. The other issue being that 2 of our members are not here. Our chairwoman is not here.
But we have 7 here, so we'll have 7 there.
We'll need to make sure that at least 5 folks who are here tonight can make that.
What date are you looking at?
Respectively, if I could suggest, actually, if we could either do the 18th or the 19th, that would be preferable, just so we can have a whole night and hopefully get through the preliminary subdivision application.
My dance card is empty. I think it's more of our professionals, what they can do.
I prefer the 18th at 5:30.
Yeah,
18th works for me.
18th works for me.
Insights available.
All right, so do we have a,
Does that sound like everyone is available on
The 18th? Yes.
18th?
Yes.
July.
Sorry, July 18th,
What time?
either 5:30 or 6, what do you prefer?
What's best, since you guys are working this out, what's best for everybody?
5:30 or 6, is that
Yeah,
what you're asking?
yeah.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
All right, so, let's get do we need to take a motion?
Yes.
So here's the thing, because it's a special meeting, the applicant would have to notice for a special meeting.
Do you have enough time?
Yes, we'll have enough time.
Planning
Do
board.
you agree to do that?
We'll renotice, and then this board will also provide notification as well pursuant to
Correct.
OPA. Thank you.
And the objector knows, that's it.
We will not be hiring the insult. So it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, can I get a motion to carry the application to July 18th at 6 PM?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Daniel Shanamayo and a second by Yvonne Clayton. Mayor John Moore?
Yes.
Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton?
Yes.
James Bonanno? Jim Henry?
Yes?
Jennifer Sauter?
Yes.
Alexis Taylor?
Yes.
Eric Gallo?
Yes.
And Daniel Shanamayo.
Yes.
Thank you. Application carried to July 18th, 2022 at 6 PM with further notice.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say to the people who came to hear this particular application, it will be on July 18th at 6 o'clock, and sorry to have inconvenienced you. I hope you all can make it, and we'll go from there.
It'll be open to the public all.
Yes, it'll be a special regular meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you for being flexible.
Okay, and
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
yes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.